So, you're looking for a payroll provider, you've heard about Gusto, and you've got some questions. Well, in this video, I'll be answering whether Gusto is a good option for you to use when running payroll, how they stack up against their competitors, both in terms of price and quality, and what you absolutely must know before you decide to use Gusto. So, diving right into things, what actually is Gusto? Well, Gusto is essentially a modern HR and payroll platform that helps over 200,000 small businesses across the world run their payroll. They're focused specifically on small businesses, which sets them apart from some of the other companies we're going to be talking about, and it's what I personally use to pay myself a salary, and it's what I've personally used for the past, I think, like 1.5 to 2 years to run payroll for 2 of my different businesses, which has led me to saving some significant money come tax time, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So now that you understand what Gusto is it a good option for you to use when running your own payroll? Well, let's start with the pros. First off, they are the cheapest option on the market for my personal use case, which is a one-person business. So if you have a solopreneur business where it's just you're the only person on payroll, Gusto is likely going to be the cheapest option for you out there because of how their payment tiers are structured compared to their competitors, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Also, and this is a pretty sweet deal, if you use the link down in the description below, you can actually get a $100 Visa gift card when you sign up for Gusto and run your first payroll. So that actually is going to cover over your first 2 months of the service, which is something that no other competitor actually does. Now, you don't have to use my particular link, but you have to use someone's referral link when you sign up to get the $100 bonus, because if you don't sign up using someone's link, you're not going to get the $100. So I don't care if you use my link or somebody else's, but make sure to use one of those when you do sign up. Now, outside of the price factor, there's also the quality factor to consider. And Gusto, I found to be one of the most user-friendly payroll platforms out there. Now, I did experiment with a couple different ones before I landed on Gusto, and what I found was that with a lot of the other platforms, there's a lot of different steps that need to go into you actually running payroll on them, whether it's going through different checklists or completing different steps or things of that nature. Whereas with Gusto, it's literally just one button you have to click whenever you want to run payroll. And that's the whole process. They take care of all of the taxes, all of the accounting, all of the paperwork when you click one button. So it's super, super user-friendly, super easy to use. And for me, like, the objective is to find a platform where I don't have to spend hours and hours inside of my payroll software. Like, for me, the best payroll software is the one that I rarely have to interact with. And so that's personally why I landed on Gusto, because it is very streamlined. It takes only a couple of minutes to run your own payroll. Now, they also do have a couple of other cool features that are probably worth mentioning, but I don't take too much advantage of myself. One is going to be the employee dashboards. So like I said, with the 2 businesses that I have hooked up to Gusto, both of them, it's just a one-man operation. That's me. So I don't need an employee dashboard for my employees to kind of log in and see how much they've been paid or what their benefit status is or anything like that. But that is a pretty strong selling point of Gusto. And then secondly, tying into that are the actual benefits that you can offer to your employees through the platforms, whether it's a retirement plan, whether it's a savings plan, maybe it's a college savings plan for one of your employees who has a kid that's growing up and going to go to college. Maybe it's an HSA. I mean, there's so many different options of different benefits that you can offer your employees through Gusto, which with some of their competitors, which we'll talk about in just a second, they're going to require you to kind of upgrade your plan before you can actually include those. Whereas with Gusto, there's a lot of stuff you can actually include on their kind of base bare bones plan, which is what I personally use. But there are also a couple of cons that you want to consider when looking at Gusto, because with any platform, there are going to be pros, there are going to be cons. You're going to want to weigh those against each other to figure out what makes the most sense for you. So one con that I found many times when I was researching all these different platforms myself was that the customer service, people were tending to complain about the customer service from Gusto. Now, I personally have not had any problems with their customer service. I have had to interact with them a number of times for a number of reasons. I moved my business from state to state, and so I have to kind of talk to them and figure out, how does that get reflected in my payroll and things of that nature. But I've never had an issue with it. I know they're only responsive during the week, which has not been a problem for me, but some of the other platforms out there also do give you weekend support or 24/7 support, which could be useful to you if you imagine you're going to have a lot of questions for these people. But for me personally, like I said, I want to interact with them as little as possible, and so that hasn't been an issue for me. The second con is that they're not free. I mean, none of these payroll platforms are going to be free. The free alternative is for you to do all the paperwork yourself, but that is just way too time intensive for me to even consider, because I would much rather pay, in this case, about $45 a month for a service like Gusto than spend multiple hours per month filling out paperwork that I could just have a service like Gusto kind of automate for me. It's just frankly not worth my time. And if you're running your own business, it really should not be worth your time either. So you're going to have to suck it up and pay for one of these platforms, regardless of whether you choose Gusto or somebody else. Now, something cool to note here is that they don't actually start charging you until you run your first payroll. So you could go down below, get your free $100 and sign up right now and not actually run your first first payroll, and so you won't get charged yet. So that's what I did with my second business. I had one business already set up and running, added my second one as well, but didn't start running that one for like 6 months, and so they were only charging me for one business for that 6-month period where I actually had 2 of them connected. So just a cool thing to keep in mind. Now, moving along, let's talk about Gusto's competitors and how they kind of stack up and why I personally landed on Gusto when looking at some of the other popular options as well. So most popular other option for your payroll as a small business is going to be QuickBooks. Now, QuickBooks has both their accounting software and their payroll software. The accounting software is for doing your books and kind of like reconciling all of your expenses and all that stuff, sending invoices, and the payroll software is for paying yourself, your employees, etc. Now, you would think because they're both QuickBooks, they would be connected in some way, or you could bundle them and save money, but that's actually not the case. So they have like a bundle on their website, but there's no discount between doing the bundle and just buying both of them separately. So unfortunately, if you are already a QuickBooks accounting software user, there is no advantage to you to signing up for QuickBooks payroll software as well. Now, in terms of the price point, QuickBooks payroll is going to be a little bit more expensive than Gusto. If you have a one-person operation, it's going to be about $50 per month, whereas Gusto, you're looking at about $45 per month. So not the biggest thing in the world, but that is like $60 over the course of a year. And if you pick a payroll provider, you're probably going to end up sticking with them for the long term. So $60 over a year, multiply that by, I don't know, 10 to 20 years, could be looking at like $1,000 or more in savings. So that could be significant. Additionally, if you do plan on upgrading or adding more employees, that also does get more expensive more quickly on QuickBooks, because to upgrade to the second tier on Gusto really only brings you to about $50 per month, whereas upgrading to the second tier on QuickBooks brings you up to about $83 or so per month. So the costs do tend to add up a little bit quicker on QuickBooks, whereas with Gusto, yeah, you can get more functionality, more features at a lower price point. Now, another common competitor is ADP, and I think ADP is actually what I was getting my paychecks sent to me on when I worked at Dairy Queen back in the day. That was my first job. And so ADP specializes in big businesses like Dairy Queen as opposed to small businesses like the businesses that I run. But they do actually have a small business focused payroll solution called Run that is targeted towards businesses with like 1 to about 50 employees. Now, even with this small business focused software, you do actually have to call them up and get a custom quote, which is a little bit of a hassle. And I don't really like that in terms of kind of like a payroll provider, that I just want something to be super, super simple. Like I would rather just go online, compare apples to apples. Okay, how much is this? How much is that? Which one's the better deal? And which one's going to save me the most time? Whereas having to call up, get a custom quote, to me, that just feels more like a big business thing and not like a small solopreneur kind of thing. And additionally, what that means is they're going to charge you extra fees for pretty much everything. So if you want to add this or you want to add that, everything is being custom built and everything has a cost associated with it. Whereas with Gusto or QuickBooks, it's just kind of like, this is the package. You can choose package 1, 2, or 3. And so with package 1, you get this, that, and the other, and then package 2 adds that. So for a small business, I think it makes a lot more sense to kind of go with one of the cookie cutter options like Gusto or QuickBooks, as opposed to kind of building everything out from scratch. So boiling things down to Gusto in a nutshell, if you're making more than about $60,000 in profit per year, probably makes sense for you to consider an S Corp. Again, that's not legal advice, that's just potentially going to save you some money. And if you are going to set up your S Corp correctly, you're going to need to run payroll through some kind of payroll provider service. Now, I spent dozens and dozens of hours researching all the different platforms, and this is where I personally landed. When I need to make a decision like this, I take in all the information and then some. So personally, I do feel very strongly that Gusto is the best option out there. That's why I personally do use them. And if you want to give them a shot and try them out for yourself, again, there is that $100 Visa gift card in the description below if you do decide to sign up using my link or somebody else's link. So hopefully this video was helpful to you, and best of luck getting your payroll up and running.